Loyd has been around the field of paranormal investigations and parapsychology since the 1970s. He has been the voice of paranormal investigation since the original Ghostbusters movie came out, and he's been doing research in this area from even before then. Loyd has done numerous TV appearances, has done many radio shows. He is truly the preeminent expert in this area that I know of, and very much, I think, within the field. I don't think there's anyone who has done more work in this area than Loyd has. He's written a number of books. If he doesn't tell you about them, he's also a teacher at the Rhine Education Center, and he's going to be teaching 2 courses coming up in August. One of them being, we're going to co-teach a course on the ethics of paranormal investigations, and the other is how to choose a psychic. Really interesting topics, very diverse, and thank you for being here, Loyd.
Thank you, John. Well, in this next, I guess, half an hour or so, 35 minutes or so, I'm going to try to collapse what we cover in a lot of our classes at the Rhine Center into just one quick overview session to kind of give you an introduction. So first, my favorite quote, and all my students see this, science fiction writer Kathleen Sky: "There's no such thing as the supernatural. There are only things we don't understand yet." I think that's just simply a key statement for science in general. Okay, so the title of this is Paranormal Investigations, and I'm going to get to what that actually means for us. But contrary to the reality shows, because unfortunately the paranormal TV shows, the reality shows, have created on the negative some real misconceptions. On the positive, it's brought a lot more people to, I guess you could say, to the playground to play with it. We just want to make sure that they know what they're doing. So the paranormal as a term is much, much more than ghosts and hauntings. It has been applied, of course, beyond psychic phenomena to also include things that are unexplained. We deal mainly with investigations with apparitions, hauntings, and poltergeists. I'll get into that in a bit. But those are psychic or psi experiences. And there's a big disconnect with the paranormal reality shows that they seem to think on the shows, or at least they put out the idea, that these are not connected to ESP or connected to psychokinesis. So all three of these fall under spontaneous psi experiences. All of them start out with a human witness or an experiencer if we're going to investigate. And I'll explain why that is. Unlike the TV shows, there is no technology that can detect psi phenomena, that can detect ghosts. No matter what they say on TV, there's nothing that we have for sure that can detect apparitions. So technology is absolutely secondary to human experience. And also we almost never investigate in the dark. It would have to be that rare case where people are only having an experience when all the lights are out and it's the middle of the night. And the thing that really always gets me, and I've been on panels at some of the ghost conferences, the ghost hunter conferences, where some folks from TV will say that there's nothing beyond the 1990s. There's over 140 years of scientific investigation of these things. And most ghost hunters, many, many people who follow the TV shows are totally unaware of this. So why do we investigate? Well, we investigate anything to solve a mystery in some respects, but from a scientific perspective, we're trying to gather data to understand a particular phenomenon or a group of phenomena. We want to understand and eliminate the normal explanations when we do investigations and research. We want to be able to form questions, hypotheses, and if possible, test them. Much harder in the field than it is in the laboratory. We want to replicate the work of other researchers, certainly in the laboratory and controlled research. Again, tougher to do in a field investigation where you are not in control of the environment. We do want to increase our knowledge in general of the phenomena and the experiences. And of course, this is something I'll talk about at the very end. We want to help the experiencers when they are asking for help. Of course, there are a lot of folks who just simply want to go out and have an experience of their own, and that's okay as long as you are keeping other things in mind. So I mentioned that we're dealing with spontaneous psi experiences. And of course, these are psychic phenomena or experiences that happen beyond the controlled conditions that you find in a laboratory. So they also are typically the uncontrolled experiences of normal people. We call those spontaneous, but in many respects, when a psychic or medium does something, we still consider that a spontaneous psi experience, even though they are in control and a conscious control, because it's not under controlled conditions. So I'm not going to go through all of these, but when we talk about field work or field research or experiences we can look at outside the laboratory, it is all of these. We don't investigate necessarily all of these. We may get reports of all of them and work with people or inform them about all of these and what we've learned over the years, both from working with people's spontaneous experiences and from laboratory findings. But these are all on the continuum of psychic experiences or psi experiences. On the recurrent front, which is what we want to look at, we want to look at not just one-time experiences, but the recurrent experiences. We're dealing with our big three, the apparitions, hauntings, and poltergeists. That's our typical paranormal investigations. However, one can also be a field investigator looking at cases of the reincarnation type, such as what Jim Tucker does and others, and Jim Matlock and others have done, working with children who remember previous lives. I personally have been involved in a number of investigations of the claimed abilities of various psychics and mediums, some of which have turned out to be genuine, and unfortunately, some of which have turned out to be absolute frauds. In some instances, not even good frauds. So we are really looking at the experiences and the reports, and reports are important, of people, even in the cases where it seems the phenomena exists on its own. And what that means is, if you have a situation where there is truly an apparition, a conscious person without their body, so someone who has survived the death of their body, they exist on their own. We don't need any witnesses. But in order for us to investigate, unless the apparition happened to come into contact me directly, which has not happened yet, we have to have the experiences of witnesses. We have to have reports from witnesses. So we can't deal directly with the phenomena unless it becomes evident to us directly. So let's take a look at these three different things that we're dealing with here. One of them is hauntings. Now on TV, you'll hear this referred to as residual hauntings. And psychics talk about imprints. They talk about psychic residue. The term place memory is an old term that we've been using again since probably around the late 1990s. And I think it actually really encapsulates what we're dealing with most of the time. It's as if the location, or sometimes an object, because it can be an object, seems to hold information about its history, possibly recent history, possibly older history. And how we as witnesses, as experiencers, pick this up would either be through a form of clairvoyance, ESP, essentially, of the location or of the object and its history. Or, there's always a possibility that there is something going on in the physical environment that can eventually be understood from a current physics perspective, and the human brain and how it's picking up information from the environment. So we have to consider that as a possibility. It may not be purely a psychic thing, even though it's still a function of consciousness in that sense. One of the ways to look at this is if you know of the phenomena or the ability of psychometry, which is something that psychics have talked about for hundreds of years, the idea that you can touch or hold an object and pick up information about where that object's been, who its owner is, that sort of thing. It's history, essentially. And it's actually not too hard for people to learn this. I've taught a number of my students to do this. I've done it on occasion myself. I know psychics, really good psychics, who've been able to do this very well and work with police over the years. So if you think about psychometry, picking up information from something about that object, something about that thing, when you're in a house, you're picking up information